Welcome, my friends. Over here. No, down here. Hi. How many of you sleep in some version of this? Maybe with a pillow, maybe with your knee turned out, your back twisted. This is a terrible way to sleep. And one of the common causes of neck, shoulder, upper back pain, lower back pain, hip problems, depending on the posture you end up choosing, it can be really destructive. So, with today's emphasis on the back part of the shoulder here, I'd like to mention that one of the reasons this area likes to freeze is if you like to sleep in these very awkward positions. And there are lots of kinds of instruction I can offer about how to break that habit, because of course for many people it's a safety issue or it's just how they've always slept. And so breaking that habit can be really difficult. A few close friends of mine, actually, one in particular, had a terrible habit with his knees tucked up underneath him, his neck craning on a pillow in the most odd position. It was the only way he knew how to sleep, and it was destroying his neck and back. And so we took some time to correct those habits, and there's a few really good ways to do it. One of my favorites in the clinic is to get a shirt that has a pocket in the front, and then sew a golf ball or some kind of little round uncomfortable structure in there so that when you roll onto your stomach it wakes you up or pushes you over because it's uncomfortable to lie in that object. You could do that on both sides or whichever side you tend to roll onto. This kind of thing can really help. And another really useful way is to get a body pillow, a big thick body pillow, and try laying on top of that. And at first it will stimulate that tendency to lay in your stomach that you're used to. But usually what happens as you sleep is you slowly slide off to the side. And so you're still mostly down, but you're moving towards sleeping on your side, which is, of course, much better for your neck and back if you're sleeping in the correct position. You want to sleep with your spine long without your limbs losing circulation as best you can. And so if you are somebody who sleeps face down on the bed with pillows or not, please try to adjust that. And of course, there's different reasons that people want to sleep that way. It depends on your age. But just be careful and recognize that some of your difficulties may be coming from how you lay in the bed during 1/3 of your life. And when you're ready, let's go ahead and start in this comfortable position again. Falling open, settling into the present moment, noticing any sense of momentum that you have from your day or toward the rest of the day. That mental energy just dissolves as you let go. Similarly, all of those held spaces in your body dissolve as you let go. That moving energy between yin and yang, between the body and the mind, that we often call emotions, this weather system of qi in our body, as everything settles, especially as we cultivate the danxian space, the emotions become calm and stable. Letting go. Softening your face, relaxing your throat, sides and the back of your neck. Continuing to release the tops of the shoulders, which we worked on yesterday. And now, as well, releasing the backs of the shoulders. This is this area where the scapula moves toward the spine. All of this can pull forward, down, forward. It pulls back toward your spine. It can pull down and in. All of these attachments pulling in through here, and the deep structures attaching to the spine, any of them can begin to grip and tighten. They can also tighten and pull up more in the direction that we were working with yesterday, or it can pull in more commonly toward the spine, or again, it can lock down, or usually some mixture of all of those, so everything freezes in place. So you want to feel this softening. Keep your chest open. Don't collapse, but do allow your shoulder blades to soften away from your spine. In which direction do they soften? We usually only know this way. But now we are softening that away, outward. If I was to stand alongside you, not with your arms behind you, but a little bit in front, in line with your shoulder, and I was to tug on your arms, just gently lengthening them. This is what I do in the clinic quite often, helping this disinhibition outward, through. The shoulder blades release down the back, away from the spine, opening the back in the same way that you're opening your chest. So both the back and the front are softened open, released. As usual, if you need to, you can use one of those massaging canes or have a friend work on your back, use a thumper, roll around on a tennis ball. There are a lot of ways to get into those areas that are hard to see or hard to reach. But start to soften these areas open. One of my favorite things to do historically has been to find the corner of a wall or a door frame and just work my back up against it like a bear up against a tree. Softening open. Most of you have already heard my stories about the bad scoliosis that I dealt with for most of my life, that standing posture and the snake and turtle practice straightened out. And so I've spent a lot of time working to open and release, including this area in my upper back. My whole spine was pretty twisted up. It's amazing how plastic, how malleable the body is. It responds to how we perform, how we move, how we think about our body, and how we express. In other words, chi flow. Closing when you're ready. As you close, notice either the habit of pulling back or collapsing forward, which also tightens your back. Instead, allow your elbows to go that way, just in the same direction if I was pulling your arms before. And then your shoulder blades soften down your back without collapsing forward. Your chest sinks and your back sinks. Hands rest. The shoulder blades sliding up and down the back is part of the back corner of the shoulder. It's one of these places it's hard to demonstrate because for most people their shoulder blades are frozen and they have no idea. But you can actually move them quite a bit, several centimeters up and down, depending on the size of your body. And they are an integral part of the movement of the shoulder. Unfreezing the back of the shoulder. Gentle circles. Softening the abdomen all the way through to the lower back. Part of softening the shoulder blades down the back is a release of the lower back. So I'll mention that from time to time, although I know that for many people it's a really big ask to soften the lower back. As we progress through our practice in the future, and your lower back releases, you'll find that your shoulder blades, in particular your scapula, will sink down your back and your arms will disinhibit instantly in a really big way, surprising way. So something to look forward to. But in the meantime, we start just by trying to let go of the shoulders. Let's do a little bit of left and right, yin and yang balancing, this fang, song, gong, letting go practice. Again, same thing, lengthwise. Releasing your upper back as though your shoulder blade wants to fall down, back, and out toward your fingers. Don't push it, let it go. And to answer one question that I got from a lovely friend over on Patreon, with this movement, a wonderful little wooden training tool here, we tend to move like this. We sort of imagine that we're a sphere and we kind of go like this to do this movement, but you want to continue sinking through to the ground. So there is a little bit of this kind of motion, but more importantly as well, we're also doing this. Sinking through to the ground. Not lowering this way, but going through the medium of the body. So certainly maintain a little bit of this, but also flow through to the ground. Don't just lean. And this is true for the other snake and turtle movements as well. We're always going through. We're not just falling side to side. And then let's soften the side of the neck. By the way, over on my Patreon page, where I store all of the group and private classes that we do, I'm approaching 1,000 classes. Maybe by the time you see this, there will be several thousand. And I don't make them public just because I want to maintain privacy for people. But if you'd like to join me over there and practice along with the people from the past, it's a very different kind of class, and you're always welcome. If you remember from the sinew channel classes that we focused on, this is the urinary bladder channel traveling up and through here, as well as the small intestine channel running over the shoulder blades, the back of the arm through here. And so by releasing along the back, by softening along the outside of the arm, this is another way to help free the scapula, because these are related movement planes. Snake, swaying side to side like a wave. As your arm descends, allow the shoulder blade to slide down your back. Keep your lower back soft and open as best you can, so that the shoulder blade has some place to move to. Tapering off. Closing. waiting for that settling to occur. If you've ever seen a cat or a dog respond when there's emotional friction, we'll say, between another cat or a dog, how do they react? What happens to their upper neck, their upper back? There's this quality that happens. And we have a lot of that same response in our body. This response from our upper back or neck, we often talk about it as the hairs on the back of our neck standing up. There's this response that we have to a certain emotional stimulus. I'm sure we've all felt it. If you pay attention, your back will go. And for people that have that emotional reaction quite often, they find it in their daily life or they're stuck there, it's frozen in your upper back. And so both by helping free that space, that will start to break loose that emotional pattern in your body because they're the same pattern. But equally, if you can stay settled here, this helps again to settle your emotions, and that will begin to disentangle that pattern through into your body because it's all one continuum. So don't skip this settling. Not that any of you would. Softening the hips. Especially emphasizing that moment when the tailbone sinks down and the lower back opens, because that opening will help to unstick the lower back and will help the back of the shoulder to sink and to open. Both directions. Large circles. Opening the lower back, softening your glutes, releasing around your sacrum. Both directions. And then upper spine, starting small as usual. As your head drops forward and around and you release your upper back this way, still lengthening. Free up the upper spine. Free up the back of the shoulder, the space between the shoulder blades. Both directions. Usually nice to start small again. Take your time. Gazing down between your feet, opening the back of the neck, space between the shoulder blades. Feeling that opening, spreading open, your fingertips sinking toward the ground. And then very gently rolling upward. Let's look up and down several times. Lengthening. lengthening the spine from the mid-back all the way through the top of the head. Like you're getting a little bit taller, just curving forward. Closing. Feels nice to loosen up. Let's do a little work with the shoulders. As usual, quick reminders. Go all the way around the circle. Palm turning back, palm turning forward because you open the front, palm turns back because you release the upper back. Pouring the weight from one leg to the other helps disinhibit the hips, the lower back. As long as you are disinhibiting the hips and the lower back, letting them go, which of course helps with your scapular release. Both directions. Emphasize the letting go quality. Today, emphasizing release as it drops forward, but don't pull it forward by tightening the front. Let it fall forward because you let go of the space between scapula and the spine. You may need to go a little bit slower if your body is hesitant to release that. And that's okay. Just keep moving. Don't freeze. Both sides. Equally, as usual, make sure that that stable side remains not frozen, but able to be closed too. And this will further help with that opening of the upper back. Otherwise, you're just sort of turning and it doesn't quite reach to the spine. Opening and closing. Wonderful practice. It's in every movement that we do. Both directions. Again, to use this little tool, make sure that you go all the way around the circle. Notice if you're cutting off an area, don't just make a square, make it round. Especially after more than a month of practice. You should have a better sense of what's going on in your body and trying both directions. You can spend more, of course, in one direction or the other. And you can trade sides if that feels better. But do take the time to feel through the full range of motion of the joint. Letting go. Shoulder blade sinks down as you release the top, like yesterday. Sinks down, upper back falls open. Let go, let go. Make sure that your hands have the chance to turn all the way in, not because you turn, but because you let go of your back. Let go of your upper back. You could feel that rhomboid collection of muscle between the shoulder blades there, surrounding the spine, allowed to release open. They may be cranky and hesitant. And so again, as usual, you can just go as slowly as you need to until they fall open. But don't use force, or they just pull back and you've complicated the problem. Learn to let go. letting go. Allowing that upper space to fall open, lengthening, releasing open. You know the drill. Tapering off, being extra gentle. You know, with the tops of the shoulders and certain other places in the body, you know, the glutes that we were working with or some other tight spaces, you can really put a lot of pressure in them. You can use the therapeutic cane. A friend can come by and drop their elbow into that spot, and it can help break up stagnation, and it can feel pretty good and actually be therapeutically helpful. And there are other spaces in the body that if you do that to, they just become cranky. You've made them more irritable, more likely to tighten up. And the deep musculature between the shoulder blades is one of those places that you have to be hesitant to push hard. And so if you have a friend come work on you in this area, for instance, or on the shoulder blades themselves, don't push too hard. Or what you might find is that it feels better for a day, and then the next day it's twice as tight. And the lower back is like that, for instance. If you disperse the lower back, you've made it weaker. The reason it was tight often in the first place is because it's frozen to protect a weak space. And so you disperse its structural foundation, and it feels loosey-goosey for a day, and then it gets hurt. And so you be careful. The upper back isn't quite like that, but it is likely to be touchy. So for some people, good pressure and strong, vigorous movement through it will help to loosen it up. And so you can try it out and see. But if you notice that the next day you're a bit extra tight, maybe you have a headache, then please be extra gentle, extra patient with that area in your body, and go slow. If you do roll around in a ball, for instance, use a really light, squishy foam ball or a tennis ball, this kind of thing, or have a friend use their open palm to rub the area, not their fist. Just a thought. So here the bad habit is pulling back with your shoulder blades. As your palms turn forward, you're softening open the front, the space beneath the collarbone, which we'll talk about more tomorrow. But to let this be open, what people tend to do is they squeeze their back. You can't quite see it with my sweater on. My shoulder blades are pulling together. We don't want that. Instead, you release the upper back and you open the front. And so there's a relative closing in the back, but not because of tension. You're still disinhibiting that space in the upper spine, letting the shoulder blades sink instead of pull tight. very common to use this kind of movement to tighten the upper back instead of loosen it. If I was there with you, I'd poke you with a stick and say, soften up. Both directions. Looking down, releasing the upper back. Shaking out just a little bit. Lengthening back, drawing your elbows back. This one is particularly useful for describing what we're doing, because as my neck comes back, the habit is to scrunch the back of the neck, but we can lengthen the back of the neck. Or my habit here being to pull my elbows back by squeezing my shoulder blades together instead of letting my elbows go outward, which still puts pressure on those posture muscles that I'm looking to strengthen, to heal that tech neck habit that we all walk around with. But I'm doing it through lengthening and opening, not through squeezing, closing. You'll still get stronger, but your body's correcting instead of habituating tension. Falling open. Release the shoulder blade down the back. Take your time. Shaking out a little bit. So again, here up the midline. Palms turn down before the level of the heart. And they're turning down in part because the shoulder blades are sinking down the back. And that allows this joint to rotate this way. Again, it's like turning it like a sphere backward. So the hands also turn in that direction without leaning back. Top of the head follows the palms up, lengthening the spine, shoulders soften. For today, my favorite part of this moment is here, when the shoulder blades, instead of being up, they go down. You can see my arms get longer as my shoulders let go. Make sure your lower back opens. If you're arching your back during this, your shoulder blades won't release. And then let's soften down the sides. Laying the front and the back evenly. When I'm doing woodwork, if I have a piece of wood that's drying, and maybe I put it one side down on a solid surface and the other one is exposed to the air, what happens is one side of it dries much more than the other one does. It dries unevenly. And so the board or the piece of lumber, whatever it is, curls into a sphere, kind of like the one I had there. It just rolls up because one side is short and one side is long. And very often that's what happens in our body. One side is foreshortened, one side is lengthened in some way or another, depending on our body. Maybe it's uneven on either side. And so we want, as we soften down, to be the piece of lumber that is evenly open on both front and back. I hope my carpentry metaphors make sense. If you want to look up my master instructor that I apprenticed under, you can look up JapaneseCarpentry.com and see Dale's work. He is just such an artist. Let's try this again. Shoulder blades sink. That allows the palms to turn over. Continuing to sink. Top of the head follows the hands up. Now, lengthening down, emphasizing that opening of the upper back of the shoulder. This one can be especially important today, both to practice but also not to over practice. Don't overdo it. Part of the space that needs to release for this movement to be possible lies down and under the scapula where it's attaching. And so by releasing that area again as well makes this movement a little bit more possible. One of the things we want to do is to develop a more even sphere of awareness around the body. And this is plays a bigger role in practices like Taiji, where you're developing a spherical style of movement, and martial awareness can be important. But so often we only identify maybe with this section of our body. We're completely unaware of the movement of our feet, let alone the movement of our mid-back. And so drawing more awareness to the possibility of movement through this area and its relationship to your spherical movement of your body and its relationship to the ground and the movement in your hands reintegrates this otherwise frozen space into this more holistic full body movement. When any space is frozen, it adjusts the movement to the whole body. Again, it's like that idea of where can you fold the garden hose, kinking it in the middle and not have it affect the whole hose. We are one whole fluid being. And so any spaces that are frozen like this is for many people, it will adjust everything. So we have to become aware of its part, not just the stuff we imagine is in the front, but our whole being, especially around our spine. Softening, the shoulder blade falls down the back. So this movement at the top here is a full circle. I'll try to exaggerate the whole rotation of the spine here. You can see how it rotates My shoulder blade sinks down the back, and we lengthen away from each other. The movement, of course, is smaller than that, but the full rotation of the shoulder takes place if you can. It's part of what we're developing with this movement. So don't skip past it. Don't just push up. Rotate around. Again, I'll exaggerate. I'll leave this hand out of the way. Up. Hand stays in the midline. I'm just trying to exaggerate the movement of the shoulder a bit. Once more on either side. All the way to the ground. That's a wonderful movement from the Ba Duan Jin, the 8 brocades, the 8 pieces of gold practice. Feels nice. Let's do some black snake, twisting around a tree. Remember the direction that the arm releases. The shoulder blade falls, and that allows the arm to track evenly behind the head. Same thing is happening here. The shoulder falls, and so the arm is able to move easily here, so you don't have to lean back. And then feel the shoulder blades sink, the upper back open, disinhibiting the arm all the way to the fingertips, to the ground. The arm that's behind your back can be palm against your back of the hand against your back, eye of the fist against your back. Any space that feels more comfortable and feels like it opens your shoulder blade more efficiently. That's the correct hand position for you. So you get to experiment a bit. Let's do one more. You can use whichever side needs a little bit more help. Shoulder opening. Waist turns. Don't twist your knees. Melting, then closing. Don't do that. Shoulder blades fall down the back. Chest is stable. Your chest rises and sinks, opens and closes a bit. So your back does something similar, but it doesn't collapse. Similarly here, wrists cross, falling open, your shoulder blades sink. This is one of the primary practices for this skill. You let the weight of your arms way down on your shoulder blades, breaking them free of old scar tissue and tension. But you have to let go, don't pull down. If you pull down, you're using the muscles from beneath, which will just freeze the motion. chest opening and sinking. This one and the next one are probably my two favorite movements for getting the shoulders to disinhibit in this direction. So perhaps take extra time on those as you practice if your upper back is particularly frozen. Falling outward. Don't push your arms out, let them go, like they fall toward the horizon, around the circle. This is another modified movement from the Ba Duan Qin. Shoulder blades slide down the back. That's why my arms are dropping, my palms are turning forward, because my shoulder blades are sliding down. They're pivoting around this circle here, and then they come forward. So I'm not flipping my hands, I'm releasing my shoulders down. That's the secret to the practice. Open, shoulder blades slide down the back. The lower back has to stay open. You can't do this, or your shoulders won't move. And so they go around the circle, and then they return. Elbows a little higher than the shoulders so that the shoulder blades can drape and sink. Perhaps if you need to, you can put your arms down. Sorry, that might have been a little intense for people. You can always soften in between. If it's comfortable for you to keep going, you certainly can. Eventually, it doesn't feel like anything. Your arms are just floating. So I could do it all day. But I know that in the beginning, when there's still a lot of tension, it can be uncomfortable to keep your arms up. So do feel free to let them fall when you'd like. Sometimes I get over exuberant. Let's do one more on either side. If you know the more advanced version from the 8 brocade set, you can certainly make use of that. I'll do a 100-day series on the 8 brocades as well at some point. Maybe by the time you watch it, it's already here. It's my favorite first thing in the morning, 5 or 10 minutes of movement while the tea is heating up. That's my practice in the morning. Feels great as soon as you get out of bed. Don't collapse your shoulder. Your shoulder blade opens, slides down. It's not doing this. This white snake series is particularly good for opening the upper back, for releasing the chest and the scapula. So we don't want to skip past it. Lead with the fingers, not the elbow. Fall down your back. All the same skills apply. Your arms float up, your shoulder blades fall down, the space between your shoulder blade opens. Don't squeeze them together. It's too common to do this. It's the opposite of that. Back opens. Nourishing the middle, becoming very still and quiet inside. So here the shoulder sinks. You can see it drop down. And then similarly here, as the hand slides down the side a little bit on the back half of the body, you let the shoulder blade open down the back. Don't squeeze your upper back together. Let it spread open. Spreading open your upper back. Both sides. If you've already unlocked your Dantian pivot, then make certain that it goes all the way around. Don't do half turns, which is a really common mistake here. Let go all the way through. As your hands move toward each other, spread open your upper back. Don't close in the back. Spread open. But don't close your chest. Just let your chest sink a little bit. As you continue to release your body, you'll notice that your soft tissue starts to move a little bit more freely. Instead of being one locked mass, as though you're made out of a block of wood, it becomes more like there's an outside of your body and an inside. Like you're able to move around inside of the soft tissue. There's qualities and layers of movement possible. And so your shoulder blade releasing is one of those layers that you're starting to find. Where my arm can move one direction, my shoulder blade can be free in another. We eventually harmonize all of this. But in the beginning, everything is sort of a frozen block, like a Muppet character. And so we find more possibility, not just in the bone structure, but through the soft tissue in the body. Start to feel this possibility for movement inside, not just around. Let's do a bit of golden snake. What everybody's waiting for. Opening the upper back. Don't close the upper back. Just lengthen to the fingertips. Shoulder blade sinks. Open the upper back. Don't pull your shoulder blade forward. Don't pull your shoulder blade back. It moves, but not because you squeeze it, because you get out of the way, and movement moves it. Just like our meditations. Meditation meditates. We don't do it. Movement moves. We don't do it. If you know what I'm talking about it, then go ahead and allow that to become more active or passive part of your practice. If that statement just didn't make any sense, then ignore me. Just crazy talk. Make sure that you are breathing normally. Freeing up your waist, don't twist your knees. Keeping your lower back soft so that your shoulders can release down the back. If you have time and don't mind spending longer than 90 minutes doing the practice, you can pause the lesson and spend time doing that spontaneous movement practice that we sometimes do here. It's a big part of the snake and turtle practice, but I've left it out in favor of emphasizing these specific neck and shoulder releases. But it can be nice to move freely and explore movement through your upper back in a playful and open-hearted way. So here, palms turn in, because because we release the upper back but don't collapse the front. Here we open the front, but we don't pull back the upper back. See if you can avoid doing that and instead fall around. Let the shoulder joint rotate, becoming free moving, like a well-oiled hinge or a ball bearing that is well greased. If a ball bearing is functioning well, which part of the surrounding metal does it touch? The answer is none, because it should be touching grease. If it starts to touch things, problems arise. And it's the same thing here. If we clinch and pull in, and everything starts to connect to everything else, we start to hurt ourselves. Instead, we set everything free, and we let it be soft and fluid, liquid. Pretty soon, the thing that connects is this hydraulic fullness, this freedom of movement that goes through, that we can call qi. Circulation of whole body movement. Easy. Try to use varieties of metaphor and imagery so that for each person, one of these images will seem particularly meaningful and strike home. If you have examples that have felt really meaningful to you, then please do include them down below in the comment section. Little teaching tips, experiences, something that you heard from somebody else that maybe a different student can benefit from. Part of what we're doing here is building community, helping to reshape the world in our very small way, planting seeds for a more peaceful and open-hearted future. Let's do a couple more. Shoulder blades slide down the back. Can you feel the softness? Can you feel the grease in that ball and socket joint? Everything feeling open and free. If instead you're beginning this process and what you're finding more is that you're pushing into old injuries and things, again, please be careful. Always consult an expert, a joint specialist if you need to in your area, wherever you're from. See if you can make certain that everything's okay. Most often what happens is as you practice, you're discovering the problems that have been underlying the whole time, that you've been numb to or that you've been ignoring or working around. And so now that you're releasing those workarounds and you're moving through the space and becoming aware of your body, you might be becoming aware of problems that have existed for a while. And so, of course, discomfort can evolve from that process. And you always want to be mindful that it's an okay kind of pain or discomfort and not something that you're creating that's getting worse, because I'm not there with you to check. And so if you need the help of a doctor or another expert, always reach out, check in just to make sure everything's okay. But very often things will be popping and moving, feel sore, feel suddenly tired, those kinds of things. But use your best judgment and your good sense to make certain that you're being safe, especially with your neck and your spine or old injuries. Just be careful. I can't be there, so I want to make sure everybody stays well through all of this. I know we have some pretty intense people out there that like to push into things. See if you can just dial it down a little bit, just a smidge, a skosh. Shoulder blades release down the back, sliding down. Don't draw your shoulder blades together. Soften your back. Your shoulders move, but you're not pulling them tight. As you open the front, don't close the back. Lead with the fingers. Shoulders disinhibit down. Lower back opens, which of course is good for your shoulders. I know that I'm repeating the same thing over and over again, but for me, repetition, I know, has been very helpful. So I want to provide that for you as well. Emphasize this moment when you're looking down and you're opening along the back. And then free your hips, softening your spine, opening along the back. This wave down as you soften downward. Only sink down as far as feels comfortable. Remember that you could also do this seated. Let's do one more and then closing. Releasing your back, your upper back in particular. For this one, let's come up the midline this time, emphasizing that rotation of the shoulder joint, sinking. You can see them sink down the back. So they rotate like this, allowing the arms to pivot, rotating around. I don't even have to turn my wrists. I'm just dropping my shoulders open. My lower back opens, so I'm not leaning back. Softening all the way through. Letting go. Like a rainfall, it washes down through you. Settling in the middle. Let's just do this a couple more times, then closing. You can also do a version where you gently open the front of your body and look up, but do not close your back. Washing down and through, clearing your mind, softening the emotions, your whole body, releasing through to the ground. Sinking only as far as feels comfortable. You don't nearly have to go this low. On the last two techniques, I went a bit deeper than usual, sinking down toward the ground, just to show the possibility for the movement. But especially until we do further work by opening the hips and the legs in later series, we start with the neck and shoulders. Eventually, these movements will feel effortless. You just float up as you free your legs and your hips. The movement goes through them effortlessly as we start to release. But we need to let this go first. Otherwise, everything is always stacked up on top of the body. And we can't soften from below because gravity's doing its work. And so if you feel like I'm going far too deep for you or too many repetitions, please just make them more shallow and more effortless. Stay in the direction of easy and comfortable because your body's more likely to loosen and to feel safe and open in that space. Don't push it. Pushing it only causes your body to push back. We have to let go of this need to force things to be different. Soften, open. So I'd like to spend a little extra time here. Feeling the arms, of course, lengthening outward. Feeling the shoulder blade freely moving across the upper back, softening the space between. If you're able to place your attention onto the muscles that overlay the scapula itself, then you can also help to ease those spaces, those lines of tension. Softening your lower back, around the ribs, because of course the movement through the upper back is also attached down in the lower back. these great swaths of musculature that move through the body. Softening the back of the neck similarly. Don't twist your knees, don't turn your hips. In fact, that opposite hip falls open, almost in the opposite direction. Now I'm all excited to teach that hip and leg series. Your awareness sinking deep into the body, highlighting awareness of the backs of the shoulder and the attachments, nourishing the spaces with your attention. Notice how much more loose the body can become. Notice increased clarity, calmer emotions. I will take off my mic here. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. Glad to have you here. Your homework, don't escape yet. Your homework is to pay attention, 1, to how you sleep, posture in which you sleep, what that does to your shoulders, your back, your neck. Please pay attention. There is such a thing as good sleeping posture and bad sleeping posture. And part 2, notice how your daily emotions impact that space in your upper back. Not just posture. I'm hoping by now you've been paying attention to your posture, but also your emotional posturing and how that impacts this area in particular. And tomorrow we'll come back and think about the front of the shoulder, and you'll make you feel bad about that too. But you'll feel great afterward. Thank you for joining me, everybody. You're doing great. Keep up the good work, and I will see you tomorrow. Ciao.